Listen, I know that people don't like Texas today. I know that the track, as it is now, is a pretty terrible NASCAR track. And I get it. The Gen 6 and the next gen doesn't matter. They make no difference. The racing is bad. It's a bad track. They have tire issues all the time, and there's really no redeeming qualities for this track at this time. But I don't want to talk about modern Texas. I don't want to complain about it. I actually want to talk about old Texas and why it matters how good it used to be. And yes, old Texas, pre-2017 Texas, was a good track and had some decent to good racing by the time it was done. Old Texas, after the initial patches that it had after a pretty rough start to say the least, was a run-of-the-mill, mile-and-a-half cookie-cutter Charlotte clone. There was really nothing special per se about it, except where it was and how many people it could get into its facility. This was during the Gen 4 era, and while many of us today might not have these problems, back then it was viewed as a horrible thing. There were too many cookie cutters on the schedule at that point. Mile-and-a-half tracks, while they might not have had the worst racing, were not great, and for an old school fan base like NASCAR did have in the 90s and 2000s by today's standards, well, this was terrible. Plus, it was instrumental in both the axing of North Wilkesboro and Rockingham, two staples of the North Carolina market from the NASCAR schedules. In 1996, getting Texas on the schedule, and after 2004, getting Texas a second race on the schedule. It represented all that hardcore NASCAR fans saw wrong with the expansionist 90s and mid-2000s and early 2000s NASCAR. Everything that NASCAR wasn't to them, Texas Motor Speedway was. And I can't blame people for being upset with that. But the thing is, it still was a good track, in my opinion. I just think that it was clouded in the minds of different fans, or just was glossed over because of the shortcomings, and massive ones at that, it did have. The track nearly immediately had multi-groove racing, something that a lot of newer tracks and newer mile-and-a-half tracks in particular don't have. And it wasn't like after 4 or 5 years, it was just training on the bottom, similar with the Atlanta redesign and repave. And with that, it filled a big market for NASCAR. NASCAR has always had an issue with having a staple event in Texas, but for the first 10 to 15 years, it was pretty normal to have over 150,000 fans once and then twice a year at the Fort Worth facility. And plus, I would say this, it would have a lot of good racing and a lot of good moments that I think people either don't remember or choose not to remember.
And Casey Kane almost ran out of racetrack exiting turn number 2. He's got one more shot, boys. It's going to be right here.
Lap car is going to cause Elliott Sadler to lose.
I don't know, Darryl. I believe Elliott Sadler shut the door high on him. He's going to shut the door high on him. Sadler had to lift for Sauter. Here comes Kane. Sadler by half a car off of Kenseth.
You know, Burton's got to be thinking, how many times am I going to find myself in this position?
Oh, about twice more. That's how many laps to go. Lap and a half. Burton the leader here. Kenseth has the drive off the corner. And
Side
at the white flag, it's Kenseth. 1 lap to go.
This is it, boys. Can he do it? Burton on the inside. Kenseth on the outside. Burton.
That's as far as he's been.
He got him. He got him. He got him.
Clear.
He got him off the two.
Buddy, bring it home.
Bring her home. He got him now. Kenseth got into this up a little too high off of 2.
Be smooth, man. Be smooth. He's going to get a run off. It's all yours. Bring it home.
Jeff Burton comes off the corner. Jeff Burton, the first repeat winner in Texas Motor Speedway.
I don't know why he would say that. Why would he say, am I better off to finish second?
I don't know what that means.
Here he comes again, making another run at him. 3 laps to go. Can he hold the bottom of the racetrack? Got to believe those 2 tires are going to take effect on the 17. Here comes Johnson.
Power slide off the corner.
Like they're dirt tracking at 190 miles an hour. Can Johnson hang there? Back in the throttle for 48, Jimmy Johnson.
He's just going to take it right here. He just squeezes Matt Kenseth. You can't quite get him clear.
Unbelievable. These guys are side by side, lap after lap. Johnson's got to be smart. He's got to be smart right here.
Kansas trying to hang on. Johnson.
Still there, white flag this time by, still there, barely.
Oh,
Whoa, hang on.
Loose.
Wow. It is going at it for the race lead. The top two of the championship clanging off each other.
Now, these are all really fun moments and great finishes too, but I will say, just because there are really good or great moments over a 20 or so year span does not mean per se that the track is good. Look at the Kentucky Speedway. The Kentucky Speedway has had some pretty crazy moments, had some pretty good finishes, but would anyone really say that that track is good? I know I wouldn't. So there has to be a bit more to it. There has to be more than just 4 good finishes in the span of 20 or so years. And that's what I also want to talk about too. One moment for me really defines how good this track could be. It's not one that I would expect many to remember. It wasn't during NASCAR's heyday. It wasn't even during the COT era that many fans, especially younger ones, look back with member berries on. No, it was the 2015 finish of the spring race. Don't remember it? Well, maybe you do. But for me, this finish defines why Old Texas was good. This had different tire strategies at the end. Tires on a relatively worn-out mile-and-a-half surface mattered. And I think that's something that can be carried over to today's racing. There was different lines that helped negate the issue of dirty air. If Jimmy Johnson, per se, went down low, then Kevin Harvick could go to the middle and Dale Earnhardt Jr. could go to the top. Those 3 drivers were the best 3, and they made their way through the pack, and while it was difficult because of dirty air to pass, they proved it was not impossible. That, to me, for a mile and a half, is all I ask for good finishes and good racing. And routinely, this had 2 500-mile races that had that good racing and in many occurrences had that good finish. Now, it wasn't perfect. It had boring races still. Every track does. I mean, Daytona has had boring races in the past. So has Bristol, Martinsville, and Talladega. All of which I think are known for their action have had boring races. And Texas will be no different. But I think that looking back at this history is important. Why, though? Why does this matter? Why am I talking about racing that hasn't been at this facility in almost a decade now? Well, because I think that the past is how we can repair the future, or at least prepare for a better future in NASCAR. It's how I think SMI and NASCAR saved the Texas Motor Speedway and also save the Texas market overall and not have to worry about anything happening to COTA. Cookie cutters at the moment are great with the next-gen car and have fallen into favor with fans. While it might seem like a step backwards for NASCAR to add a few more of these tracks, as long as it's not overdone with multiple races a year at just about every one, I think it can be done well. Yes, it might seem like NASCAR fans are changing their mind, and in a way they definitely are. But we have new data and new experience to go off of, and it shows with this car just how good the racing can be. So I don't think it's the mistake that many old school fans think it will be, as a lot of mile-and-a-half races, like the last 2 Coke 600s and most of the Kansas races under this car, have been, I'll just say it, bangers. They've been awesome. 1 race a year would make it also so people on TV and in person could have it more as a must-see event, in my opinion. A bit of scarcity for the great racing, and have a bit of schedule variety still in the process. And with that, too, you also could probably have it back on the date it worked on for so long in April, and maybe even have a doubleheader with IndyCar. On top of that, the stands, because they cannot be changed, will mean that you can't do anything major. You can't make it a short track. You can't make it a bigger 2.5 to 3 mile super speedway like many people like to say. I don't want them to do anything like they did with Atlanta with it either, as I think that can get oversaturated. And while the racing can be good, do we really need 8, 9, 10 super speedway races a year? I don't think so. This could be similar to the next-gen facelift that Kansas has gotten, as Kansas was viewed, I think at least, in a pretty good light under the Gen 6, had some pretty good races no matter the package, but has become probably the best overall track, maybe outside of Charlotte, maybe overall, that the next-gen car in modern NASCAR goes to, and is universally seen every year that these 2 years have been run with the next-gen as one of the 3 to 5 best races each year, if not the best. And the crowd that went to it this past September probably was the biggest one I have seen since going there, and probably the biggest one since a lot of stars like Gordon, Earnhardt, and Stewart were racing in the 2010s. I would say this: I think Texas can be redeemed, and I think all it takes is just a bit of going backwards with NASCAR. But with that, I want to pass this all on to you. Let me know what your thoughts are on Texas Motor Speedway. Do you think that it deserves another shot? Do you think that maybe doing this will help, or do you think it's too far gone? Let me know down in the comments below. And while you're at it, leave a like on this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel for more great NASCAR content. Thank you so much to all my channel members for your continued support. And until next time, have a good one.